Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Prose podcast, your go-to source for the art, the craft, and the business of publishing. I'm Tally Shamus, an agented writer and a literary intern.
And I'm Lauren Kahn, an author and literary agent. As former attorneys and book lovers, we're pulling back the curtain on an industry known for being opaque.
And today we are joined by Alli Hoff Kosik. Alli Hoff Kosik is a writer based in Philadelphia. The former host of the SSR podcast, her work has been published in Marie Claire, Real Simple, Business Insider, and Cosmopolitan. Too Blessed to Stress is her first book. Follow Alli at Alli Hoff Kosik on Instagram. So Alli, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Tally. I'm thrilled to be here.
So Too Blessed to Stress, I'm going to show it for anyone watching on YouTube. Beautiful cover. It's coming out in March. We are so close.
I just had to take a deep cleansing breath thinking about it because as we record, we're 6 days out. And I was talking to another author friend today who I feel like for so long it seemed so far away. And now all of a sudden it's here. So I was just taking a deep cleansing breath thinking about it.
How are you feeling?
I feel it's so interesting because I don't know if I thought that I would all of a sudden feel different. I don't know when I thought I was going to wake up and be it's here when I've been anticipating it for so long. Maybe the day before I'll feel that way. I don't know. It's scary. It's so out of your control. You just put it out in the world and you hope you've done everything you can do. I'm getting excited for the fact that there are events coming up and on Pub Day, March 3rd, I have this event at my local indie and so many people are coming. My family's coming, but my second grade teacher is coming, who was the person who really got me hooked on writing. And then a bunch of moms at drop off this morning told me that they're coming and a bunch of new neighbors, my high school friends are driving. So I think that is really special to think about. And then knowing I'm going to get to see people in other cities after that. But I think that's about as much as I can wrap my head around right now.
Yeah. That's incredible. Well, I would love to talk a little bit about the publicity, but maybe I'll read the short description first for any of our listeners. It sounds so good. So the description is: for fans of Bad Summer People and the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, 4 influencers begin to suspect their megachurch's new pastor isn't as devoted as he seems and must decide if exposing him is worth revealing their own secrets. Influencers and megachurches. Oh my goodness, that is so fascinating. How did that idea come to you?
It's so funny that you put the question to me that way because this morning I bring it back to school drop off again. I send my son to a Jewish school because I spoiler alert, I do not belong to a megachurch, and it's sort of, the word has gotten out around the mom community about the book, which is really nice. And the director came up to me today and was like, I heard that you have a book coming out next week. What is it about? And of course it's, 7:45. I'm a mess. I've barely brushed my teeth. We hit traffic. I was trying to get gas. And I have all of these lovely women who are leaders in our local Jewish community looking at me, and they want to know more about the book. And I'm like, well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you ask about that here in this context. So I'm sort of continuing to workshop my answer to this question depending on the setting. But I think at this point, we know it's safe to say that it was not born out of a lot of real personal experience. I did not grow up in a megachurch. I'm not a member of a megachurch now. It really came out of curiosity and some sociological interest in some things that I was seeing online. And it's funny because now in 2026, there's been this real interest in pop culture. It's in the zeitgeist now with Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and even Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I think they're sort of the leaders right now in talking about this stuff in a more mainstream way. But I started to get obsessed with this content in 2021. And at that time, it was sort of this weird thing that I was interested in that nobody could trade notes with me about. And so I was just really obsessed with these videos that I was seeing online, so separate from my own experience. And I wanted to know why I was getting hooked. There was no reason that I should be getting hooked. I was a 30-year-old, largely agnostic person living in Philadelphia, not looking for spiritual guidance or makeup tips. And yet I was seeing these women on my feeds and I was like, wow, I'm kind of into what they're selling, literally and figuratively. And I wanted to figure out what that was about. So I researched it and then I wrote about it.
Yeah. It is a fascinating topic. Like, I feel the same as you, so I am totally not part of that community, but Mom Talk got me as well. For a long time, I was watching their videos, and I have nothing in common with these people, but they're fascinating.
Yeah, and they're good at what they do, not only as dancers on Mom Talk, of course, but also like they're out in the world sharing the joy of their lives, of the gospel, if we want to be
Yeah.
really literal about it. And it works. Like people have been evangelizing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years because it's effective. And social media has just opened up a new way to do that. And I think,
Right.
there's this like more mainstream understanding, I think, of Mormon influencers, and a lot of that is born out of a longer tradition of Mormon mommy bloggers, which is really like rooted in Mormon theology, which I can geek out about forever. But there is this like other group that I was a little bit more interested in, and I couldn't figure out why nobody was talking about it, and still nobody's really talking about it. So I'm hopeful that after more people read Too Blessed to Stress, I'll be able to geek out with them about
Yeah.
some of these influencers.
Let's talk a little bit about how you got here. You've had kind of a non-traditional, non-linear, let's say, path
hmm
in publishing. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I studied journalism in college. I went to school in Washington D.C. I started college in 2008, peak Obama era. I thought that I wanted to be a political reporter. My junior year of college, I had sort of like a quarter life crisis, and I realized that I didn't want to be a reporter at all. And I had made all of these decisions about where I was going to live and what I was going to do. And I really didn't feel comfortable walking up to people and just asking them questions. So I was like, oh, what now? What? Like, what do I do? And I found on my university's job board an opportunity to intern with a literary agent in Bethesda, Maryland. And I didn't know that literary agents were a thing at that point. And this was a very niche sort of agent, but she was kind of like my reminder, I think, that there was this whole world, this whole industry around books, which,
Mm,
duh, but I had always kind of taken that for granted because I had been a reader my whole life. And so I think when you love something so much and there's such a given in your life, you can forget that there is like a whole machine working to make them real and to put them in your hands. And so that kind of like reset my path. I interned with her for about 3 semesters. I graduated from
wow.
college a semester early so that I could hopefully get a jump on the job market. And I took a job working in the sales department at one of the big five publishers. Kind of hopped around in various sales functions there for about 5 years before deciding that as much as I loved the book world, it wasn't, for a variety of reasons, the right place for me. And then I freelanced. I started freelancing full time about 10 years ago now. Have done a lot of different things as a freelancer, got to continue to hone my writing chops, which is what I wanted to do. In that time, I started a book podcast. So I got to really like keep my foot in the book world, which I missed. Like I missed talking to writers and to other book
Mhm.
people. And I got to meet so many amazing authors while I was handling SSR all on my own. So I have so much respect for anybody who is doing what you're doing. It's not an easy task. And then I finally realized, like, you know what? I have not written just like a story in a long time. I have not gotten creative. And I had allowed all of these other things to take priority over what has been my goal since I was 7 years old, which is to be an author. And for me, the right move was to like get some structure going and recommit to like a real writing practice. And so I went back for my MFA starting in 2000. Perfect timing. um, and the piece that I worked on my second year, so my thesis project was the first draft of Too Blessed to Stress. So it's a little bit of a
Mm.
winding road, but also a path that's kind of like kept my foot in writing and reading and the industry. And now I'm just kind of like seeing the industry from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. I have so many questions. So, first, okay, let's start at the beginning. You're interning with this agent.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider going into agenting? What did you learn in the internship, and how did it kind of set your sights on what you really wanted to do in terms of your career?
So I was interested in agenting. I still think that would be so interesting to try that. I would love to try everything in this world. But
Mhm.
yes, I took a couple of like informational interviews my senior year of college. Did some visits with agents in New York just to like kind of understand what that world looked like. And then honestly, I just think it's like a very mercenary answer. I think I got a job on the publishing side first. Like, I think
Mm,
that you know this better than I do, but like getting a job with one of these agencies is really competitive. Getting a job anywhere is competitive, especially in
mm,
2011, 2012. It was like a very stressful time to be graduating from college. Um, and I just think that I got the opportunity in publishing first. But
yeah.
I did think that the agency piece was really interesting. The I liked like brand building piece of it, and I couldn't have named that in that particular way at that time. I don't know that I don't know that agents were even using that exact language back then, but I really liked the idea of like partnering with an author to like build their career, to help
Mhm.
them be in the right direction. I liked the idea of like being on the ground floor of their work. And I don't know, I just envisioned myself like being like the young agent working with a young author and kind of like doing it together, which I still think is kind of the dream. And then the publishing side, like I said, the job came up first, but I also think I understood that I would learn a lot.
Mm.
Um, and of course, I took this job in the sales department, being promised that like it was a way to get my foot in the door and that maybe I'd get to go work in editorial and maybe marketing, which would have been another step in the right direction. And spoiler alert, there's another one of those. Like getting a job in editorial at a big five is like basically just as hard as going to be an agent. So I do think that working in sales, and I have a new appreciation for what I learned working in sales now. I
Mhm.
think it's made being an author more complicated in some ways, but I also feel more informed.
Mm,
And being on the sales side, like I got access to so many different functions within the publishing house, and I got to be in like lots of different kinds of meetings. So while at the time, like it wasn't really my forever thing, it definitely like it helped me develop an even greater appreciation for not only the publishing side, but the authors and everything that they do to make their book successful.
so let's talk about how that did kind of prepare you for being a writing. How did the sales position at a publisher give you skills that you needed to make your book a reality?
Well, I mean, it's changed a lot. So I always say, like, when I
Mhm.
was working in publishing, it was like peak Kindle panic. Like, it was e-readers are going to come in and destroy the business. Like, that was the narrative that we were fighting. And
Mhm.
especially working in sales, like, that was really scary. And look at us now, 10 years later, like, books are thriving in multiple formats, which is super cool. Social media was not what it is now. We were like just starting to like do some social media marketing and like I, I remember we did campaigns on like cereal boxes. And this was 10 years ago. This was not like this was not 1975, but it was like we're going to do
Yeah.
a partnership with a cereal company. So it was very different. The opportunities were different, the levers that were being pulled were different, but I think it prepared me in that I at least have a sense of what questions are being asked when I'm not around, which is
Mm,
hard. Um, I know that there are all of these meetings. Like I kind of know the cycle of meetings for each list, and
mm,
I know how a book's placement track can change from one meeting to the next, and I know how important it is that certain retailers are chiming in and like asking certain questions, and so it's helpful because it gives me context for all of those things. I think it, is a reminder to me that, like, a lot of that is out of my control, um,
mhm,
which is scary, but also kind of grounding in a way. Like, I've done all I can do by writing the book, and on the other side, what's prepared me is the podcast and,
mm,
building the podcast on my own because I was doing that by myself for 7 years, and that was a crash course, as you know, in, like, marketing and branding and PR and all of that and networking. Like I met so many amazing
for sure.
people while I was doing the podcast. And so all of the things that I know are not in my control because of my experience working at a big five, I have regained like a little bit of control because I know how to do those things from the podcast. So yes, I have like an amazing publicity and marketing team in house at Grand Central, but I also know how to do a lot of the social media stuff myself. I know how to like get in touch with a lot of people. I have some great contacts. So I think those two things together, like working in publishing taught me the things that would be hard to achieve in-house. And so then I had to learn the rest on my own. And I also have
Mhm.
a different respect for like just the distribution that's possible in a big five.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it is scary because I know that people have been talking about me in these conference rooms for months, and like, I wish I knew what they were saying, kind of. I don't know, maybe I don't.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in your journey in terms of, querying, submission, all of that, but
Hmm.
I really wanna talk about this podcast first, so maybe we'll
Yeah.
talk about that first.
Yeah, so I have a podcast right now. I'm co-hosting a podcast with one of my best friends. It's called "Is This a Thing?" It's really a passion project. SSR, which was my old podcast, was such a heavy lift on me. I was reading a book a week for it, doing all the editing myself, all of the promotion, and so I wanted to keep podcasting, but I wanted it to be more fun and conversational. So "Is This a Thing?" is a little bit of a lighter lift. We have new episodes every other week. It's like a chatty, gabby podcast. Please come listen. It's a lot of fun. But SSR, I don't know if I'm allowed to say bad words on this podcast, but
Yeah.
I am. Okay, so it stands for Shit She Read, but also silent sustained reading, which was like one of my favorite parts of elementary school when you could go read by yourself for a certain amount of time. And every week on the podcast, a guest would choose a book from their own childhood or like teen years to revisit with a contemporary lens. And so we've revisited everything from like Babysitter's Club to Nancy Drew to like assigned reading like Animal Farm, Hunger Games. Like we covered so many books. I think 250 episodes or something like that. And over the years, I got to interview amazing people. Meg Cabot came on the podcast. Claire Lombardo came on the podcast. Jasmine Guillory came on the podcast. Like just amazing people that I was so lucky to get to connect with. And it was like a nice reminder that these books that are like evergreen for so many of us, like they connect us. And when I was working in publishing, I was working for several years in the children's sales department, which is its own unique animal because but backlist books in the kids world like kind of can still be marketed much more than backlist books in the adult world because kids are aging into them at all times. So I
Mhm.
liked this idea of like just turning that lens on these old school books over and over again, and it was a great ride. I do miss it, but it was a lot of work. But those
Yeah.
episodes are still up if people want to check it out.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds absolutely fascinating, and then actually having the authors on, that's my
Yeah.
favorite part. I mean, episodes like
Yeah.
this where we can read the book and then talk about it and kind of
Yeah.
get the method and whatnot. So you mentioned
Hmm.
learning a lot about publicity from the podcast. So how did you kind of transfer those lessons, and what did you learn in the first place?
I learned that you have to be your own best advocate. I learned that you have to be a little bit shameless and you have to get over yourself.
Mhm.
It's interesting talking to my debut author friends who don't have as much of that experience, like marketing themselves online. And
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, like it's cringy for me too. I don't love turning my camera on myself and being like, pre-order my book. But I do feel like I have a little bit of a thicker skin to it because
Mhm.
I had been doing it for so long. And I was also lucky because at that point I had a pretty solid community of people who knew me through the podcast who were already excited to support me in the book in this new chapter. Um, but yeah, I learned that like you don't know if you don't ask. You have to send the email. Like send the email to Claire Lombardo and see if she wants to like talk about Sweet Valley, and she will, and it will be hilarious. And she's super cool and chill. Um, I learned that I learned that you have to like just keep at it. Like you can't. The consistency is so important with podcasting. That's what they say is like you have to have new. That's the most important thing with podcasting. And I've tried to I think transfer some of that over to marketing on my end for the book, which is like yes, sometimes you feel like you are driving people crazy talking about it all the time, but for them it might be new and for them it might
Yeah.
be interesting, or
Yeah.
maybe they'll share it with somebody else. So I just think it's okay to be your own best advocate, even
Yeah.
though it feels draining and silly sometimes.
Yeah, and they say what? Someone has to see something like
Yeah.
7 times before it becomes an action or something like that?
Yeah. So like I will keep showing you my book cover and I will find different ways to do it, but like I'll show it to you again. It's fine.
I love that. That's incredible. So then in terms of I really want to dig into this kind of publicity point because I think especially with traditional publishing,
Mm.
some people may not understand exactly how that works. They think, I'm going traditional, so my publisher is going to take over all of my marketing. I don't need to do anything. You mentioned, you're also having a book tour. So let's talk about that, about kind of like what you've had to do and what your publisher's taken over and what people can kind of expect from the traditional route in that sense.
Yeah, so my experience has been that, I think because I came in to the process with some contacts and with some experience and like with a plan, um, I think my team was pretty open to like letting me go for it and see what I could come up with on my own. What I have heard from others, and again, also a little bit from my experience, is that if you're a debut author, um, publishers are just like not really investing in like these huge tours. They're not investing the time in
Mhm.
planning them all because it's a risk. Like post pandemic,
Yeah.
stores still haven't really recovered from
Mhm.
the dip in people coming to in person events. So if you want to tour as a debut author and you don't have a track record, you have to plan it yourself. You are going to have to figure out a lot of the logistics yourself. My team has been great about booking me on some podcasts and interviews. And on top of that, like because I knew some people before, I was able to book things on top of that. So I think some of my experience is unique in that I kind of came in and was like, I can handle a certain amount of it. And maybe if I didn't come in with that, like I would have been able to ask for more. But the best advice that I got from my agent is basically like, be clear about a couple of requests that you want to
Mhm.
make.
Yeah.
Because publicity teams and marketing teams are overwhelmed. There are a lot of books that come out every week, and
Mhm.
only so many of them are like big, huge lead titles.
Mhm.
And whether we like that or not, like we kind of have to deal with it. And they really do want what's best for your book, and they want to do what they can. But it's your best bet to be like really specific about the things that you don't necessarily feel capable of doing, um,
Mhm.
and the things that you would like them to direct their efforts to.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think that is fair in this climate,
Yeah.
for the author to take on, especially if you have the contacts, especially if you're kind of like, the go-getter personality, which I sense from you. It's fair. But so you mentioned your agent. So I guess
Yeah.
let's take a step back. As I mentioned, let's go all the way back to drafting this book. I thought this was so cool because you have multiple POVs and you also have like this epistolary format where you have like inserts in between chapters. I love that. I would
Thanks.
love to dig into like how did you make all these decisions? How did you distinguish the voice, of the different characters? And let's go right into drafting, the very first kind of step.
Okay, so I was very lucky because I was working on the first draft quite closely with my manuscript advisor in my MFA program, who happened to be Kylie Reed,
Yeah.
um, who is just the queen of voice.
Mhm.
Nobody writes voice like Kylie. Nobody does dialogue like Kylie. And I knew I wanted to write this book with multiple POVs, and she was the perfect person to help me
Mhm.
figure out how to do that. Originally, there were actually 5 narrators in the book. She warned me that that might be too many, and then after I finished a first full draft, one of my beta readers was like, "Yeah, I think we need to like combine 2 of these." But I worked a lot with Kylie, just like on the voice. I am a much more like voice character writer, reader, person. If I could, I would write books that had like no plot and just like endless pages of people talking to each other and like going about their lives. And so that was like something I really had to overcome in that first draft. And Kylie, again, because she's so great at voice and character development herself, helped me figure out how to match what I was trying to do with like a little bit more forward motion, which was necessary. But those interstitials with like the Reddit posts and the podcast transcripts and all of those things, those actually didn't come into play until much later in the process. I think once I was working with my editor,
Sure.
along the way, we had some other formats. When I was working with my agent on it, we actually had we had this kind of like scaffolding of a documentary crew at one point. And that was how we went on sub, I believe. There was this whole story around it that there was a documentarian coming to cover the church and the Moral Mavens and their social media work. Which was interesting. And then my editor ultimately was like, I don't know that we need that. Like, let's take that out. Let's put in some interstitials instead. So it definitely has lived many lives. The Gala for Goodness, which is kind of like the big set piece at the end where we're working toward a big party that the church is planning, that didn't exist until I was working on the book with my agent. Um, yeah, I mean, it really has transformed quite a bit to where it is now.
Yeah. And so your agent is Claire Friedman, right?
Yeah,
At
at
Inkwell?
Inkwell Management. Mhm.
Yeah, fantastic. So how did your querying process look?
Yeah, I feel so lucky that I found Claire. I went through a couple of rounds of querying. Mostly the first rounds were people that like I knew from other writers. So maybe they weren't people that I had chosen specifically for myself, but people that I'd heard might be good. And Claire was one of the first people that I found. I was like, oh wait, like I think she could be like great for me. Um, and she called me and she told me that she'd stayed up all night reading the manuscript. And it just so happened to be that she read it at the time when the Tom Sandoval
Oh,
Scandival
yeah,
was happening on
Scandival.
Vanderpump. I was like, wow, so much time has passed. I can't even remember what we were calling it. But it was she was reading it at the same time that Scandival was breaking. And she told me that she like it was competing for her attention with Scandival. And I was like, oh, okay. Like we are a good match.
Yeah.
Um, but interestingly, I found out that I was pregnant the same week that I signed with her. Um,
Oh.
so we've been on kind of this interesting journey together. My book went out on sub the day my son was born. She didn't know that I went into labor. I got back to the recovery room. My son was born 3 weeks early, and so I knew the book was going out on sub eventually in January. But I had joked that my book baby and my baby had sort of been like developing together this whole time. And I opened my phone for the first time after he was born. And I had a note from Claire that was like, congratulations, you're out on sub. Um, so she and I have had like sort of this like path together of like being involved in these major moments in each other's lives. And I'm grateful for the way that she has been patient with me through those periods. And as you can tell, like I am somebody I really like to jump in and just like I want to get my hands dirty. I want to do everything I can. And
Mhm.
she's been really helpful in helping me sort of navigate that. Like, what is my role here? What kind of questions are smart to ask? And how can I best be a partner to the team?
Mm. So what did the submission process look like for you? Did she kind
Hmm.
of take that on, spearhead it? Did you have input?
I did have input. I feel like relative to a lot of my friends, I was pretty in the loop. Um, I saw the list. I knew which editors we were going out to. I had asked to be pretty involved because I knew that I was going to be home with a newborn and really antsy. And I felt like having more information would probably be better for my brain at that point. So
Mhm.
she sent me passes. So I think I saw all of my passes. And I think she had a pretty good feeling about my editor. Like she was like, I feel like that Jackie is my editor at Grand Central. She was going for lunch with Jackie, and she's like, I think I'm gonna talk to Jackie about this book. She's on our list. I think she could be the right fit. And it all kind of fell out pretty naturally from there.
Wow. So how long were you out on sub for?
Probably 2 months. It wasn't terribly
Oh,
long.
wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
incredible. That's quite quick.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
know
so
exactly what day I went out because it's my son's birthday. I went out on sub on January 9th.
oh,
Um, and I signed with her in mid-March, I think. So maybe like a little over 2 months.
and so it's been almost 2 years since then, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
we've got the book now. So what did those 2 years look like for you?
I'm not a patient person, so like I said, it's so weird, like, it feels like it's taken so long to get here, and now all of a sudden it's here, and that's just messing with me, I think. Um, I would say we did, like, one big edit round where we took out that documentary piece that I mentioned. We added the interstitials. My editor was really interested in me, like, dialing up the humor,
Mm,
and there are a couple of places where we had to finesse the tension, which is something that I'm always working on. As I said before, like, tension plot, not necessarily my strong points. Um, so we did one big round and then maybe, like, 1 or 2 smaller ones. And then just because of the timing of everything, I think my cycle was, like, a little longer. Like, I think, the book has been ready for a long time, but it just made more sense to release it now versus in the fall.
right.
Um, so yeah, it's been a lot of waiting and, trying to, like, plan ahead as much as I can. I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes on book 2, which, I sold to my same editor in the fall, which is
Okay.
exciting.
Oh, amazing.
And, yeah, I've just been kinda trying to keep busy as much as I can to
Yeah.
focus on, like, what can actually be in front of me and not worry about the things I can't control.
Yeah. No, definitely. And so let's talk about book 2 then. Was that an option
Yeah.
book with your publisher?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was something that I actually worked on. It was an idea that I had played with years and years ago, like before I even went for my MFA, and I had been thinking about it more as a YA book. Um, and I was talking to Claire about some other ideas when we were looking at book 2, and I had thought about, like, well, what if we reimagined this for an adult audience? And she loved the idea. She and I went through a couple of rounds of outlines. I do not like outlining. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm not good at it. I'm trying to get better. Um, and so a lot of it was like sort of switching off. Like when my editor would have pages to review of book 1, I would be working on book 2, or Claire and I would be comparing notes about book 2. And I submitted about half of a full manuscript for the option. Um, and it's been a pretty quick turnaround because we're trying to get that book out May 2027, which is a
Oh,
much
wow.
faster,
Yeah.
much quicker turn than what I had with Too Blessed to Stress. But it looks like we're on track. And again, it's been nice to have like that outlet to work
Yeah.
on when I'm feeling like I am antsy about Too Blessed.
How was it writing kind of your second book? Because we hear a lot from authors that the second book is tough. And especially
Mm,
like Too Blessed to Stress, I really do. Like the voice is fantastic. And I think that it's
thank you.
because you've got those influencers who are like just so, the personality is like all the way up. So can you tell us at all a little bit about book 2, how that kind of went, how the characters developed and all that?
Yeah, so book 2 is called People Please, and it is about a young woman who is returning to the beach town where she grew up going as a child, which is also where I grew up going as a child. After her life has kind of fallen apart after a very surprising divorce, she has moved in with her dad. She's sleeping on his couch. And her mom, who has long been divorced from her father, decides that she is also going to rent a place at the beach for the summer, claiming that there's like a work commitment that she has. And my main character, Kat, has struggled a lot with her people pleasing tendencies, and that, of course, is really coming to the forefront as she's unpacking this marriage that went south, and she has to rebuild her whole life. And while she's dealing with all of this, she meets a woman named Sydney who sells essential oils through a multi-level marketing company, and they get drunk together one night at an oils event. And at this point, Kat confides in Sydney that she just wishes that she could make everybody happy all the time. And the next morning, no matter what she does, she makes everybody happy all the time. And so, of course, we have Sydney, who is so excited about this as a potential new hook for her essential oils campaign, and kind of encouraging Kat to join the team. Maybe she can make some more money to transform her life. But more importantly, Kat is like faced with these new questions about what people pleasing really means and if it's helpful. And she's changing her dynamics with her family, which have been complicated for many years. Um, so it's different from people from Too Blessed to Stress, that there's only one perspective. And I don't think I knew I didn't know enough when I started People Please, or started to really dig into People Please, because I was still kind of like halfway through the process with Too Blessed to Stress. I didn't know
Mm.
enough to like realize that that would be a challenge because in Too Blessed to Stress, I'm able to look at it from all of these different vantage points and I'm able to switch into these different voices. And in People Please, I'm really in Kat's head the whole time, which forces the whole book to be more interior. And it is more of a personal story. Too Blessed to Stress is completely separate from my own life. People Please is a little bit more of like a personal unpacking of things. Um,
Mm,
and so that was tricky. There's also this like kind of magical realism vibe that forces me to like look at like internal logic of the story in a way that I didn't have to with Too Blessed to Stress. It's a lot about like,
mhm,
okay, but like if this is magic, what is the magic actually doing and how does it apply to this person and like can we have an exception? So it's definitely a little bit more complicated. Um and has some different writing challenges, but I think the 2 books are so different structurally. I think what unites them is, like, the voice because that is so important to me, and then, I actually think that book 3, which I've only just started to, like, even conceptualize, like, book 3 feels scarier to me just because I at least had the idea for People Please, like,
mhm.
that was kind of always at the tip of my tongue, and now between book 1 and book 2, I think I've learned a lot craft-wise because craft-wise, they're so different. And book 3, I'm like, "Okay, I think I know kind of where I wanna land on the craft, but I'm a little bit more out to sea on the content." So, I don't know. Book 2 is hard for sure because book 1, you're like, it flowed out of me."
Yeah.
Um, and book 3, I have, like, 2 ideas, and we have to figure out the rest of it.
Well, I love that you bring up solidifying your craft because I think that's a really interesting point. So, you have an MFA, which,
Mhm.
you mentioned you had written Too Blessed to Stress during that program. What do you think has helped you most in terms of developing your craft? Was it that MFA? Do you still read craft books? And if so, are there any you'd recommend?
I do not read craft books.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. So then I'm even
Yeah.
more interested, especially for like you mentioned, magical realism. So it's kind of like a
Yeah.
softer magic system, but
Yep.
magic systems are still tough. So I'm very interested in how you like develop that.
I would say a lot of it I'm just kind of like doing as I go. For better or for worse, with the help of my agent and my editor, who are so creative and smart and great at gut checking me when like maybe I'm not quite sure about something.
Hmm,
For me, the most important part of the MFA was the structure.
mm,
I knew that I wanted to write. I felt like I could still write fiction. It had been a long time, but I just had no I had no routine and I didn't know how to get one. I
right.
remember when I was like 23 and living in New York, I was so excited. Like I bought this cheap desk and I was like, I'm going to start writing after work. I- No, I think maybe I tried NaNoWriMo. It failed miserably. It was somewhere, maybe I could find that manuscript. Um, but I knew that I needed to like have some accountability for
Mhm,
this dream of mine. Like a lot of people say they want to write books and that they have a book in them, but like, how are you actually going to get from that point to the point of writing the book? And
right.
I also, I got to study under Liz Moore, who is amazing, of course.
Wow.
And what she said in one of the first sessions I had with her was like the most the biggest thing that you need to do here is write any book, even if it's a bad book. And I actually wrote another terrible book my first year of my MFA. And Liz was right. Like it was terrible. I went back to edit it. I thought I was gonna end up querying it. And then I was like, this is just I don't even want to edit this. It's not interesting to me. But
Mm,
to Liz's point, like I knew that I could write something that long. I knew that I
mhm,
could stick with it. And so I think whether we want to call it craft or we want to call it endurance or we want to call it just like commitment to seeing an idea through and then iterating it and editing it and all of those things, that's really what like the discipline of it was what
mm,
I got out of the MFA. And yeah, I mean, there were things that I just like in the most basic craft classes that I took, things like hadn't occurred to me about because I've just always been a reader, and I've read voraciously for as long as I can remember. And I think you take so much for granted about like perspective and point of view and different tenses and how close you're going to be as a third person versus how distant. Like I didn't know any of that stuff, so I think, especially because I'm an author who is primarily interested in voice and character, like, those kinds of questions were helpful
Mm,
for me to, like, answer for myself early on.
yeah. Well, we are big Liz Moore fans on this podcast, so that is incredible. What
Yeah,
an
she rules.
experience.
She rules.
Wow. So what does your writing routine look like now? Do you, like, have a set time that you start every day? Do you start every day with reading, or do you just go right into it?
Well, I have this small child,
Yeah.
the small
Yep.
child who was born on the day my book went out on, so
Yeah.
who, you know, I used to have these more I'm a morning person, so I used to have these
Mm,
mornings where I would wake up and I would immediately jump into work and I would immediately be so productive. And now I'm up at 6:30, but it's like 3 hours before my day can really start because it's
mm,
school and
yeah.
getting everything organized for school. And then I do have a day job. So a lot of times, like, I'm tending to my day job, for a bit, and my schedule does fluctuate, which is a luxury in some ways, and in other ways, it's really hard because I don't always know how much I'm going to be able to focus,
Mm,
on a project, and a lot of it, like, depends on the phase I'm in. So right now I'm working on edits for book 2, which means that I'm able to kind of, like, take an hour or 2 here or there in the afternoon
right.
before school pickup. When I'm in drafting mode, it's a little bit harder. In the fall, I was drafting on deadline for book 2, and it was like, "Okay, I really need to make sure that I have these hours blocked off every day,"
Yeah.
because for me, at least, like, drafting needs to happen in longer stretches, and you
Yeah.
can't really take yourself out of it for more than a day.
Yeah.
So I am trying to give myself a little bit more permission to, um, like, adapt my schedule based on what I'm working on. Um, and also, like, there are all these other demands in my life that are often evolving and changing,
Yeah.
and I can't be quite as regimented as I once was. But I think
Yeah.
one of the other big lessons I took out of my MFA experience is, like, you don't have to romanticize your writing process. Like, sometimes your writing
Mm,
process is nobody wants to admit this, but sometimes your writing process is like taking your laptop
mm,
and doing, like, a light edit while you have some TV on in the background. And,
yep.
like, it's not ideal, but you're getting it done. And then the next day, maybe
Yeah.
you can have a more dedicated time where you have,
Yeah.
like, your music on and your candles and all of those things. But, just getting it done
Yeah.
is something that I learned, and for better or for worse, that's kind of my motto
Yeah.
these days.
No, totally. I mean, completely. As a, parent of young children, it's so difficult, and it's
Yeah.
funny. I was reading, gosh, years ago, I was reading Stephen King's book on writing,
Yeah.
and he says, when you're writing, you go into your room, you close the door, and you say, nobody can disturb you. And I just remember thinking, this is me. I think I had a newborn at the time, and I'm like, well, this is not written for me.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
just,
not
you
to
can't.
generalize, but, like, spoken like a man, it's just not practical. Maybe someday it will
Yeah.
be, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I think being in it is the most important thing to me, so I really
Yeah.
try not to let a day pass where I'm not, like, in the work in some way, because for me, I
Yeah.
just wanna, like, be in the world.
For
But
sure.
if one day that's 2 to 3 hours and one day that's 20 minutes, then that's what it is, and then I'll have to figure out how to make up for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's just what we do. We adapt, and
Yeah.
you'll be in different seasons of your life. Right now, this is the season where, maybe you are writing with Bluey in the background, and that's fine.
Yeah. You could do worse than a Bluey soundtrack, it's kind of soothing.
It is. It is very true.
Mhm.
So, we always love to ask our writers on this podcast what you're reading at the moment, what you're excited for this year. I'm sure you're part of a debut group. So, are there any books that
Yes.
you're really looking forward to?
Oh my gosh, of course, I have to plug all of my debut friends. So, Paper Cut by Rachel Taft just came out a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago. It's a cult thriller.
Mm,
I read it. I loved it. And I'm not always a thriller reader. I love cult stuff, but I can be a little bit of a scaredy cat. So, um, yeah, but I was not a scaredy cat over Paper Cut. It's amazing. It's so propulsive and cinematic, and I'm thrilled for Rachel. I can't wait to read what she has coming up next. I know Olivia Mentor is a friend of your podcast, and she's a
yeah.
friend of mine, which I feel very lucky about. But her book, Little One, similar in some ways to Paper Cut, but
Yeah.
also a favorite of the year for me. And just beautifully written. I'm obsessed with everything she writes. Other debuts that I want to plug: The Lake House by Lena Patton, which I think is June. It's about a like fancy lake beachy community in Minnesota, kind of based on her own experience. It has a beautiful cover that I want to hang on my wall as a giant piece of art. And my friend Eli Raphael, who I met through my MFA program, who is now also a Grand Central debut in 2025. Her book Night Objects comes out in May, I believe, right around Memorial Day. And it is a campus thriller novel, some cult like secret society stuff going on, and just like incredible prose. I've gotten to read parts of Night Objects since it was like in its earliest iterations, and I'm just so excited for her. Another beautiful cover. And if you love like moody campus, secret society, twisty, pretty writing, Night Objects.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Well, Alli,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Yes, I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and remember to check back next Tuesday for a new episode of the Prose Pros podcast.